Let's talk about converting between fractions and decimals and percents. Okay? Rational numbers are numbers that can be written as a ratio, which means a fraction. So, rational numbers can be written in the form of fraction, or a decimal, or a percentage. So we're going to talk about that today. Here you are given 3 fractions. Now, when we use the typewriter to write a fraction, they look like this. But you know that we mean 3 over 40, right? When we say 3 over 40, what we're also meaning is 3 divided by 40. It means the same thing, and we can write it any of these 3 ways, and each of them is fine. Okay, so we're going to get our calculator out and do some calculating to figure these out. Let's do the first one. 3 divided by 40 equals. Okay, so we know that this fraction is 0.075. Yep. Okay, I'm going to let you do the other 2 and write down their decimals. Good. Now, you'll have to ask your teacher here if you're allowed to use your calculator to find these decimals, because you do know how to find them with long division, right? Let's review this first one with long division. When we say 3 divided by 40, we write it this way with long division. 3 divided by 40. Asking ourselves, how many times does the number 40 go into 3? Now we know that 40 is way bigger than 3, so it's going to be a very small amount that 40 goes into 3. Okay, so let's do the division. 40 divided into 3 doesn't go once. What about if we add a 0? 40 into 30? Nope, doesn't go. 40 into 300. Okay, for sure it goes. 4 times what? If we did 4 times 6, we'd have 24. So 40 times 6 would be 240. I think we can go even one more. Let's try a 7. 7 times 0, 7 times 4. Good. And we're going to subtract that. Remember long division? 0 minus 0. We carry that 1 over. Oh, sorry. And we have 10 minus 8 is 20. 0. Good. Okay, now let's try to bring a 0 down again. 40 into 200. Well, 4 times 5 I know is 20. So 40 times 5 must be 200. So I'm going to say 5 here. 5 times 0. 5 times 4 is 20. Subtract that and we get 0. Remainder 0. Okay, so our answer, now let's remember to move the decimals straight up, and spots then that we didn't put in numbers get zeros. So, well done. Your long division equals the answer of the calculator. You can see that here. Here equals here, right? Okay, let us back this train up. There we go. Okay. We now have the decimals, and you can do long division to figure those out, but we got out our calculator here. Let's now turn those decimals into a percent. Okay? When we talk about percent, we mean over 100. That's what a percent is. So what we want to do is now write these decimals that we have over 100, which means we're looking at their hundredths spot. Remember, we've got the first spot to the right of the decimal is called tenths. The second spot is called hundredths. Whoopsie, I forgot the D. And the third spot then, if you could talk back to me, I'm sure you'd say thousandths. Thousandths. Good. Okay, so we're looking at the second spot to the right of the decimal. If we go and underline them in red, we've got the 7 is in the hundredths, also a 7 in the hundredths, and a 6 in the hundredths. Okay, so if we write these, this is equal again. We've got the 7 in the hundredth spot, so we can write 7.5 over 100. Here on our second one, we've got 57 over 100. Okay, so we're writing, this is the hundredth spot, and here we've got 176 over 100, which makes sense. 88 is bigger than 50, so we're going to have more than 100%. Nice. So once things are written over 100, that means percent. So we can simply write this also with the percentage symbol. And 176%. Okay, let's try the next page. Here we've been given the decimal, and we're asked to put it into a percentage, which we just did, and then turn it into a fraction. So let's do that. We'll move this decimal over 2 times, because here's the hundredths spot. Let's try a little different form this time. We'll move this decimal over 2 times to the hundredths, and so here we have, when we move the decimal over, 0.64 hundredths. Don't forget the equal sign because these are equivalent, or they're equal. Here we move the decimal over 2 spots, and we would have 26.8 hundredths. Here we move the decimal over 2 spots, the tenths, and then the hundredths, and we would have 598 hundredths. Okay? So we've written it now as, well, a fraction. Not necessarily a fraction in lowest terms, but we have written it as a fraction. We can write it as a percentage then. Remember, over 100 is the exact same thing as percent. So we can switch the over 100, or divided by 100, and we can switch it to the percentage symbol. Percent. And here equals 5.8%. Looks good. This looks really good, doesn't it? And I hope it's making sense to you. Now, the problem here is that usually you don't have decimals within a fraction. So we see our first right here. Whoa, that was green. I was expecting yellow. And here also, we've got decimals in a fraction. Not good. Let's see if we can get rid of that. So what we need to do here is, let's go back and let's look at what place value the last digit has. So in this first example, we can see tenths, hundredths, thousands, 10,000s. Okay, so another way we can write this, which is equivalent, is if we move the decimal into the 10,000 spot, 64 over 10,000. Here in our second example, we see tens, hundreds, thousands. So if we move the decimal into the thousand spot, we would have 268 over 1,000. Now, that looks a lot better than having a decimal within a fraction, although it is not reduced all the way yet. In this first example, we see both of these digits are even in the numerator and the denominator, so we know for sure we could reduce it by 2. If I was to divide the numerator and the denominator both by 2, let me see, I would get 32 over 5,000. Also can be reduced. What else is there? Divided by 2 again, I suppose. 16 divided by 2,500 still can be reduced by 2. Let's see, 8 over 1,250 still can be reduced by 2. 4 over 625. That cannot be reduced by 2. I think that's the lowest, unless 625 can divide by 4. 620, oops, clear. 625 divided by 4. 625 divided by, oh my. Nope. That's our reduced answer. Okay, let's try this one. Let's not reduce it just by 2 every time. Let's try dividing it, in this case, by 4. 268 divided by 4 is 67. And 1,000 divided by 4 would be 250. That's reduced all the way. And our last example doesn't have decimals in it, so that was fine, but let's try to reduce it. 598, well, let's go by 2's again. Yeah, 598 divided by 2 is 299 over 50. I think that's as low as it goes. Convert each percent to a decimal and then a fraction. Okay, now if you were in my classroom, I would ask for volunteers and have you come up to the board to do each step. As it is, let's do it together here. We know that percents are the same thing as writing 750 over 100. So we can do that pretty easily. What about this? 0.3 over 100. Don't necessarily like the decimal in the fraction, but we'll deal with that later. And also 12.75 hundredths. Okay, that's a first step to writing as a fraction. Let's see what we can do to reduce each one. Okay, here I can see that for sure 25 would go into this. Actually, I can see even 50 would go into this. So we have, if we would divide 750 by 50, we get 15. And we divide 100 by 50, we get 2. That looks good. Let's talk about writing them as a decimal now, or doing this division. 15 divided by 2, you could get out your calculator, but I think you can probably do it in your head. If you want to divide 15 into 2 parts, we would get 7.5. 0.3 divided by 100, we could write that like this. Right? If we punch that into your calculator, you would be able to find the answer. We know, however, that dividing by 100 moves the decimal place 2 spots to the left. Check it out on your calculator. What's going to happen here is the decimal place is going to move 2 spots to the left. And so our answer is going to be 0.003 when we divide by 100. And lastly here, we're going to divide by 100 again. 12.75 divided by 100 makes this decimal move 2 spots to the left. So our answer is going to be 0.1275. You can go ahead and test that out on your calculators just to make sure. Good. So here's your assignment. Good luck with that. Make sure you're checking in the back to see if your answers are correct. Also, you know already that an excellent place to look for help is in the Key Ideas section. For 4.2, fractions, decimals, and percents that we've just discussed, you can look on page number 135 for that information, okay? And it gives you a very good explanation. You're also going to come into contact with some story problems in this assignment. Do your best and make sure you ask your teacher when you need some help.